Do you know what the first adult animated sitcom was? Before Family Guy, before The Simpsons, and it might surprise you even more to hear that it was actually produced by Hanna-Barbera.
You know you're in trouble, Harry. You're a bigot.
A bigot?
You're anti-white.
It was also the first primetime animated sitcom to run for more than a single season, and after watching all 3 seasons, I can definitely say that it's an intriguing watch.
I'm from Glee, Gay Liberation Employment Efforts. Now, I understand you have a job opening here. Sounds like it would be just yummy for one of our boys.
The show was an unabashed time capsule of the 1970s, but it will actually shock you at how the writing parallels our current day, for the good and for the bad.
I'll have another piece.
Another setback for Weight Watchers.
But without this cartoon, we wouldn't have numerous of the adult animated sitcoms that we have today, like The Nut Shack. It's The Nut Shack. Subscribe to my channel. I'm gonna be putting out more content on adult animation stuff, so if you like that, seriously subscribe. So let's talk about the one-of-a-kind show that definitely couldn't be written nowadays. Wait Till Your Father Gets Home. Before we dive into this cartoon, I do need to address one thing. About 5 months ago now, I put a poll out on my community page asking my subscribers, hint hint, that should be you. I asked which cartoon I should make a video on next, and the winner by a landslide was Wait Till Your Father Gets Home. So I seeked out DVD copies of the show, but unfortunately there was only an official release of the first season. And it was like $100 new. Luckily for me, there was a bootleg copy of all 3 seasons for $40 on BackToThe80sDVDs.com. Perfect! That doesn't sound sketchy at all. So I ordered both copies, one for presentation and the other so I could watch the full series. After about a week, the official DVD arrived, and after about another week, I was done watching it. Now I'm just waiting for the next seasons. And I was waiting, and I was waiting. That's when I decided to investigate BackToThe80sDVDs.com. Oh, f***. And because I'm lazy, I didn't try to get my money back and continue to work on the video. Then the day I was about to film my script for this video the first time, I checked my mail and, oh my god, 4.4 out of 100 actually hit. Now I had more of the show to watch. But now I'm finally back here.
Now enough excuses, you lazy dweeb! Get on with the video!
I don't know what that was. As I said, Wait Till Your Father Gets Home was produced by Hanna-Barbera, which is the same company known for producing the Flintstones, Yogi Bear, Scooby-Doo, etc. Go check out my video on Jellystone if you want to dive more into the HB universe. Really good show, by the way. But Wait Till Your Father Gets Home was unique because it was actually written for a more mature audience in mind, discussing social and political topics not often touched by entertainment media, and especially animation.
The world is on the brink of disaster from war, pollution, and overpopulation. When have you looked seriously at overpopulation?
I know. And when I look at you, I feel very guilty about my contribution.
The show was created by Ray Allen and Harvey Bullock. They're a writing and producing duo that previously worked on the Andy Griffith Show, Hogan's Heroes, The Dick Van Dyke Show, Top Cat, and even The Flintstones, go figure. Around the start of 1972, the pair were creating segments for the ABC anthology comedy series, Love American Style. And this is where what would be the pilot of Wait Till Your Father Gets Home would premiere. It was called Love and the Old-Fashioned Father. It premiered in February, and the audience reaction to this cartoon was so fierce, they would have season 1 on air by September of that same year. So let's check out the show and see if it holds up after 50 years. The main protagonist and titular father is Harry Boyle, voiced by Tom Bosley. Harry Boyle is a family guy, an American dad, a king of the hill. Harry is an honest, hardworking man who loves his family and owns a modest truck delivery company. Most plots center around him. There are 2 main plot types in Wait Till Your Father Gets Home. One where something happens to Harry which causes him to regain whatever normalcy was lost. Like in the first episode, The Fling. Harry is driving a client home and they end up having to stay at a motel. Harry lets her have the room and he sleeps in his car, respecting the woman's space. But when he gets home the next day, his children convince their mom that the dad must have been cheating. The rest of the episode is Harry trying to prove his innocence to his family. The other kind of plot is when someone makes a decision that Harry doesn't agree with, which causes him to work to try to convince them otherwise. Like in the second episode, Alice's Dress, when Alice, the daughter, wishes to wear a topless gown to her father's work event, and Harry tries everything he can do to prevent that.
Why deny the world a real masterpiece?
But you can't. All my friends will be there.
With WTYFGH, I was caught off guard by how fearless they were to bring up such sensitive social and cultural issues of the time, like affirmative action or overpopulation.
No, it means zero population growth, and I believe in it too.
We've got to restrict the number of people in the world. Or by the year 2000, there won't be enough food.
It could happen next week with your sister around.
They still had a little bit of ways to go on the exact message they were sending, but moves were being made. The first two episodes brilliantly exemplify the good and the bad traits of Harry Boyle. He's loyal and trustworthy without batting an eye, and will fight for whatever he sees as justice.
I did not commit adultery.
Daddy, please.
Refer to it as self-expression.
All right, I did not commit self-expression.
But then he's also overprotective and not easily understanding of his children's new social theories.
A man of your age is pressured by needs of virility statements and ego outlets.
And lowered libido thresholds.
Hey, come back and translate that.
Although I can't say I'd want my daughter wearing that thing to a work event either.
Oh, the ambulances won't be able to keep up with the life alert calls, I tell you, bucko.
Back to Harry. Yes, he's a conservative dad, but his kids can actually get to him sometime, which make him a likable character. His opinions occasionally change and conversations are had. But if we want to talk about real conversations, the ones Harry has with his friend Ralph are something else.
Hey, what's wrong? You look terrible.
It's Chet. He's talking about going to Sweden.
Harry, you can't let him go to Sweden. They started sex.
We'll be talking plenty about this wannabe army stooge, don't worry. But for now, let's continue through the family to the glue of the household. Irma Boyle is Harry's wife. She's a dutiful housewife and is loyal to her husband, but isn't afraid to question Harry when he's being irrational or stubborn and call him out on his bullshit.
All I said was that I was perfectly normal.
That's the male ego for you.
She also tends to be more open to the new age values and ideas their children adopt. Like when they encourage her to be an independent woman, Irma gets a job and becomes a member of the workforce. But in the end, she concludes that she prefers her life as a stay-at-home mom, with it still being pro-feminism because she is making the active choice to be a mom. Outside of the Irma-centric plots, she's a pretty standard representation of women in older media. She's the nag and usually sets up the joke for Harry the man to say.
Now remember, you have to be tactful.
You leave it to me, old Mr. Tactful himself.
Good morning.
Well, has the female Burt Reynolds come to her senses?
One last fun thing about Irma, though, is that people claim that she was the inspiration for Lois Griffin. So what do you think?
Oh, don't touch the thermostat, Meg, if Father gets upset.
Harry, why do you let yourself get so upset? It's only money.
Alice Boyle is the high school-age daughter with a thickness that means business. Although they do put in a fair share of their cheap punches at her weight, I do appreciate the representation in some aspects.
We women aren't accepting the status quo anymore. We're broadening our horizons.
Alice, with a build like yours, don't ever tempt me with a straight line like that.
Alice didn't really have the toughest time finding a love interest usually. The guys may not look like the sexiest of studs, but I mean the animation style is also just so goofy. There was one episode that focused on Alice being overlooked by a cute guy at school for a skinnier girl, which leads Alice to go on a diet and she actually becomes really skinny. Yet when she actually dates the guy, she realizes he's boring AF and goes back to her OG nerd love.
I finally had a date with a good-looking guy and found out he didn't have a thing to say. I guess they're so used to getting by on appearance, they never have to develop any personality.
That storyline may be a little wonky, but the main point is, Fred totally gave this girl an eating disorder. Most of their episodes at school saw Alice as a pretty average, if not preppy girl, which is better than the outcast role I thought they were gonna throw her in. On to the oldest sibling, Chet Boyle. He may look like a hippie for the day, but this boy is all talk and no action. He'll be sure to scold his dad for not being environmentally conscious while he sits on his dad's couch and rides a moped around town during an energy crisis. Chet, you betcha he ain't too smart. Chet does constantly mention going to help out in, how they put it, the ghetto. So I guess Chet does somewhat put his money where his mouth is, but also footage of Chet at
The ghetto
is never shown, so we could just assume that he's just kind of hanging out with his buddies over there. The Chet-centric plots are stuff like Chet finding a job, a fiance, or his own pad, but there is one Chet episode that might actually have been one of the best episodes of the whole series. That's episode 11 of season 1, Duty Calls. The story begins with Chet getting a job at his father's truck delivery company, only to notice an error and forces a recall on a massive shipment, costing Harry's company loads. Technically, the complaint was legitimate on Chet's part though, but Harry feels betrayed by his son.
So he made a little mistake.
No, we made the mistake, and it wasn't little. 22 years ago, you gave birth to a time bomb. Today, it went off.
Then out of nowhere, all this drama is just minimalized once a letter arrives stating that Chet has been drafted. The tone calms and Chet becomes sullen, so Harry goes to have a heart-to-heart conversation with his eldest boy. He wants his son to know that he loves him and he's proud of him as he's about to face the call Call of Duty. Modern Warfare or Black Ops, am I right, fellas? Alright, sorry, back to the seriousness. This talk doesn't go exactly as Harry plans when Chet announces,
The draft is against my principles, so I've decided to run away.
this shows that while Chet may be a bohemian, he's still very adamant in his values and what he believes in, which is something he may actually get from his father. Jamie, the youngest son, is the family member with the least screen time, aside from like the dog,
I'm your favorite child, remember?
and is a stark contrast from his two older siblings. He's written to be an opportunistic capitalist. He waves whichever flag has the most green.
Jamie, do you have to be here? Yep, I'm waiting. For what? For someone to send me out for something expensive.
Jamie charges a fee to do basic chores or haggles over tooth fairy money.
I'll get it for a quarter.
Just get it.
A dime? A nickel?
He doesn't get the most dialogue, but he does have some of the best quips. It's like some of the most mature dialogue comes out of the youngest character, which, hey, another pattern on Family Guy.
I hate to do this to the president, but I can't hold the line any longer.
I know this kid is into Forex ETH trading, and I'm not even fully sure what that means. They do give Jamie some soft moments, like in The Mouse, when he runs away from home after not being allowed to keep a mouse for a pet, which shows he's still just a kid at heart. To complete this animated sitcom family, of course, there's a dog, Julius. There's always a dog. He doesn't talk like Brian Griffin, and he's not funny like Santa's Little Helper. It feels like the creators didn't even want the dog as a character, but Hanna-Barbera forced them to shoehorn it in. Julius mostly just turns to the camera and gives a small reaction. Mainly a snide chuckle. I don't know why in the 70s just animals chuckling snidely was a trope, but it was, especially with Hanna-Barbera. Yeah, Julius is pretty forgettable overall, in the context of the show and compared to other HB dogs. And we finally made it back to Ralph, the crazy paranoid military freak who takes it upon himself to patrol his neighborhood in tactical gear.
Company, it's pit. Hold!
Shut up!
This guy's like an ultra alt-right nut job who's just taken the red pill enema. Like, I didn't know Alex Jones's dad was a cartoon character.
Yes, decent people have to band together. It's the only way we can get a fair voice and run in the country.
There's another way. It's called election.
Elections, you call that fair? When they let just everybody vote?
Nearly everything this guy says is throwing suspicion onto someone else, usually someone who's different than him.
Can't be too careful, Harry. You never know when a Russian submarine's gonna come down Elm Street.
Mainly the Russians, though, so that actually came around to be pretty relevant. Harry and Ralph don't work together, but are neighbors and thus carpool together to work.
Before you know it, we break up the whole California commie ring.
Ralph's character is deplorable, but the purpose he serves in the show is grand. He is such an exaggeration of the right that it makes someone who is leaning slightly right, like Harry, often reevaluate his views, thus agreeing with his children in the end.
Love-ins, music festivals, next thing you know, they'll be showing Swedish movies.
Ralph says horrible things that are only humorous out of the fact that no one should ever say that.
That's the trouble with America today. They won't believe the danger until they wake up one morning and they'll be eating their bacon and eggs with chopsticks.
Which made Harry, and probably some of the viewing audience at the time, reconsider saying things like Ralph. There's a lot of character growth or arcs throughout Wait Till Your Father Gets Home, but there is actually a pinch with Harry and Ralph. At the start of the series, the two are pretty casual friends. When Ralph says something extra loony, Harry may just nod and say sure to just move on. But after having to hear all his conspiracies for 3 seasons, Harry eventually starts debating back. Like what was once Harry just calling out Ralph sarcastically,
I don't know what this country would do without you.
turned into him straight telling him off to his face. Fortunately, things don't ever turn out too well for Ralph, but he has fun with his vigilante night patrol thing. Which takes us to...
I almost lost my bridge work. Without my sexy smile, I can't turn on my boyfriend.
The last of the significant cast members to mention is the neighborhood old lady Whitaker, or Sergeant Whitaker as Ralph refers to her. She's a wild card of a character. Don't let her age fool you, she's often escapading around with Ralph's vigilante missions. She's essentially Ralph's second in command.
Darn it, I missed him.
Which does mean that she shares a majority of his unsavory opinions. Although she has embraced the free love movement, so she's got that going on for her.
There's gonna be a giant lovin' Tuesday night.
A love-in. Are you gonna cover it?
You betcha.
The voice acting honestly wasn't anything to write home about, but the craft was basically in its infancy at that point, so it's really not like a harsh complaint. I don't mean it really critically. They had some appealing voice cameos for the time, like Phyllis Diller, Pat Morita, and Casey Kasem.
It's no more than anyone else has. Eyes, nose, mouth. It comes with every head.
Oh, and as for sound design, it's the same sound library that they use for every HB cartoon, so if you find those sounds charming, you'll enjoy them here. Something that still throws me off about these old Hanna-Barbera sitcoms is the fact that they included a laugh track?
Executive training program, college graduate, no experience necessary. Do you think I qualify? Believe me, Chet, when it comes to no experience, you are the most qualified man in the country.
Perhaps a cartoon could be aired in front of a live studio audience, but these two things just don't mix well for me. Then I came to accept the laugh track, and part of the way through the first season, episodes start playing without the laugh track.
What? It's now just empty, dead space. It sounds so ominous and off.
Oh, hi, Pop.
When did you get home?
You know, there are times I think if it weren't for commercials, some families would never see each other again.
Howdy, folks. Smiling Sam.
It's like the Disney Channel scenes with the laugh tracks taken out. I just feel like I shouldn't be hearing it.
I wonder why this happened. It's not consistent, and it happens in season 2 as well. If anyone knows the reason, please tell me in the comments. That'd be awesome to figure out. I just got an old HB exec watching this. The creators yearned for Wait Till Your Father Gets Home to have its own unique style from the other cartoons produced under the Hanna-Barbera umbrella. It's a good theater vocal warm-up. Hanna-Barbera umbrella, Hanna-Barbera umbrella, Hanna-Barbera umbrella. I mean, I know nowadays people complain about animations copying other styles all the time.
Oh, but back in the 1970s, it was like just HB, Fleischer Studios, and whoever did Pink Panther, I think. Either way, Ray Allen and Harvey Bullock riddled away at how they could tweak the usual HB style to give their adult sitcom its own vibe. And the answer is only so fitting for an adult cartoon.
They hired this guy, Marty Murphy, who previously worked illustrating comics for Playboy magazine. Allen and Bullock figured that his ability to draw sexier, rounder, yet sometimes still cartoonly and oddly proportioned bodies would blend well with the normal style.
They thought because I did magazine gags that kind of looser design would work.
Other than just the designs of the characters being visually experimental for the time, have you noticed a lack of the background and setting in a lot of the clips? That was another aesthetic choice made by the crew. A lot of cartoons before this program had always been heavily action-based. Things had to be moving, dynamic. The character models can't be stagnant for too long or the viewer will grow bored. But when this adult animated sitcom was pitched, there wasn't a whole need for intense action. A person might pick up a phone or a dog might bite somebody, but hardly anything outlandish.
That was taboo in the HB studio world.
But taking this risk on this oddball concept proved to pay off, and I can definitely see how this show inspired Family Guy, at least with the early seasons. And someone they had a not so sneaky, totally not fun time with was Cal Worthington. He was pretty famous as far as car dealers go back in the day.
However, in Wait Till Your Father Gets Home, they portrayed a sleazy salesman that looks like this real life guy.
You should see the service department. They got customers waiting there who are listed as missing in action.
Read the cards, Brad. Will you read the cards?
Over this, Cal Worthington sued the studio Hanna-Barbera, the sponsors Chevrolet, and the 5 NBC-owned stations that carried the show.
Hey, it wouldn't be an adult animated sitcom if someone didn't get sued, right? Wait Till Your Father Gets Home technically ran for 3 seasons, but you might as well say 2.
The first season is 24 episodes, the second one is 20 episodes, and the third season is only 4 episodes. So it was like the second season canceled mid-production of like the last 4 episodes, but then they just like picked them up a year later or something.
I just want to know who made this decision. The public needs more of our show.
But barely anymore, and then never again. Why even make season 3? The episodes even felt slightly off. It was just like, look at this new wacky character Harry has to deal with. There's a wacky marriage counselor. There's a wacky super sleuth detective. Irma's wacky brother-in-law. It was almost like Wait Till Your Father Gets Home had devolved into being one of those Hanna-Barbera shows that's just based on action.
The show could have probably had more longevity had it used a character arc or two. Just having some more memorable permanent beats in the show. Actually move Chet out or find a real job that's not just some soulless corporate gig. You could give Alice a boyfriend that actually lasts for more than 1 episode.
It was a valiant try for what it was, at least, flaws and all.
Yummy.
For an adult comedy program from the 1970s, I think this thing aged oddly better than expected.
Thank you for waiting until your father came home before clicking out of this video. Sorry to say he will not be. He'll be at Applebee's until 2 a.m. enjoying Dollaritas. But I'll always be here, so be sure to subscribe and drop me a like, please. It really helps me in that YouTube algorithm. In heaven, I will be asking God what the YouTube algorithm is. But yeah, don't get smited. Stay safe, y'all. Peace.
You barely knew my name. We waited too long. It's a shame.